But there's many different ways that people will manage their stress in a way that doesn't help organizations. So usually a decrease in employee engagement that often leads to retention issues, lots of turnover. When people are disengaged, they just don't try as hard. They don't care as much. And so by caring about people and the whole person, that means that they actually feel cared about and more likely to care about the organization and the work that they're doing.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership Launchpad, where we help technical managers improve themselves, their teams, and their organizations. On this show, I talk with industry leaders, coaches, authors, and experts to give you actionable insights that help improve your own performance and the performance of those around you. Today's show is another of the series that we recorded at the recent Association for Talent Development International Conference. If the video looks a little weird or the audio isn't quite as clean as normal, I do apologize. As I've said before, this is my first time recording out in the wild. Don't worry, I learned a lot, so next time, I promise it will be better. Our guest today is Mandy Varley. Mandy is the principal behavior scientist at Torch. I always love talking to people who can bring both a practical and an academic perspective to our discussions, so I wanted to make sure to have her on. In today's episode, expect to learn about the current challenges to employee well-being, why leaders need to care about that well-being and the well-being of their employees, steps managers can take to set boundaries and help improve the well-being of their employees, and so much more. As a reminder, if this is your first time listening or watching the show, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future episode. And if you're already subscribed, then I hope that means that you're getting some value out of this. And so it would mean so much to me if you could share this show with at least one other person, because that is how we grow and help more people out in our communities. So with that, let's get into the discussion with Mandy Varley. Mandy, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been so great because we're at a talent development conference, so I'm getting to interact with all these people like yourself.
Yeah.
This conference is actually the first time I've been able to
cool.
do podcasts in person.
Sweet.
They've been all virtual, so
Yeah.
this is great. And I think being in person is great for the topic that we're going to be talking about today.
Sure.
So you have a background in psychology and specifically well-being in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I think right now, especially ever since COVID, it's been a pretty hot topic. What are some of the challenges with well-being that we're seeing in companies right now?
Absolutely. So I've done all manner of research, particularly when I was doing my PhD in organizational behavior.
Yeah.
It's also where they trained us as executive coaches. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about what makes someone well, what contributes to our well-being, how do we spend our time? And so a lot of different things come up as challenges to well-being. And some of those can be, in organizations right now, we're seeing a lot of emphasis on performance, on being productive. At the same time, we're also having a lot of layoffs. It becomes even more complicated because what makes someone feel stressed in a negative sort of way varies by individual.
Sure.
And so there's a whole body of literature.
Yeah.
Folkman and Lazarus talk a lot about this in terms of what I perceive to be stressful might not be stressful for you.
Yeah.
And so that can be really challenging, understanding why someone is feeling stressed, why they're not feeling well versus someone else is coping just fine.
That's really interesting because so I work with leaders a lot to talk about, who you want to be as a leader varies depending on who you're talking to. And you have to kind of understand the people that you're working with, of how they like to be communicated to, how they want to receive feedback. I've never really thought about that angle before of really understanding what's stressful to some people and others. And that's really going to vary. For the skeptic, for the skeptics out there, what do I care?
Why do you care about well-being, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, I mean, especially if we're going to emphasize things like performance and productivity, Jeffrey Pfeffer did an incredible research. I recommend his book, Dying for a Paycheck, but he actually tries to quantify the cost of stress to American employers, and it's over $1 billion a year. So things like people not bringing their best selves to work, that's kind of flowery language. What I mean by it, they also call it presenteeism. So I'm here, I'm at work, I'm doing things, but I'm not actually being super productive. I'm not performing at the highest level that I could. You also get absenteeism. So a lot of people calling in sick. Some people like to call working from home shirking from home. I don't believe that that's the case, but there's many different ways that people will manage their stress in a way that doesn't help organizations. So usually a decrease in employee engagement that often leads to retention issues, lots of turnover. When people are disengaged, they just don't try as hard. They don't care as much. And so by caring about people and the whole person, that means that they actually feel cared about and more likely to care about the organization and the work that they're doing.
That makes sense. Yeah, it sounds like you're talking about kind of the phrase of, as when Dan Peak was talking this morning during his keynote, the phrase of 2023 was quiet quitting.
Oh yes,
right, and that's kind of encapsulates
a
lot of those behaviors.
Absolutely,
that makes sense. And I think especially today, maybe it's just COVID brought it more into light, and it's just continued since then. I imagine that it has a lot to do with what's going on in the outside world as well. Of kind of, you just have to, whatever's happening in the workplace is fine, but you kind of need, at least at some point, to account for all the stresses that people are bringing with them, and you can't expect them to just leave it at the door.
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, we definitely haven't processed the whole fallout of COVID and the way that changed people's lives. I think what COVID really did was to put a lot of things into stark relief for people and really call attention to the fact that, like, your time is not unlimited. And time is a limited resource. So how do you want to spend your time, energy, and attention while you're on the planet? And so we spend a lot of time at work, a substantial amount of our time, and some people started to reevaluate, is this where I want to spend my time? And so when I talk about actually like caring about your employees, caring about their well-being, that actually needs to be authentic. You can feel the difference between you're trying to manipulate me into giving more to the organization versus genuinely trying to help me live a full life. You're seeing younger generations care a lot more about things like purpose, meaning at work, and that's all real and true and valid. And so a lot of the initiatives that I see fail when people want to bring in well-being, it's starting to be called more things like employee experience. Sometimes you hear about employee wellness. Telling your employee to meditate and do a yoga class isn't it.
No, it's not. It's not going to solve it.
No, it's not going to solve it. And it's well-intentioned. Like, I'm not trying to be critical of leaders. It's because yoga is great. Meditation is wonderful, but it fails to acknowledge the systemic part of having a culture that cares about people, that emphasizes well-being. So it puts the responsibility solely on the individual. Like, Matt, you're stressed? Sounds like a you problem. Have you tried yoga? And it can be condescending and not that helpful.
So what are some ways then to make that shift of, because I think you're right. I think 100% very often these things of, the company's trying to be helpful. They're trying to provide support, but it's shifting it from an us problem to a you problem. What are other effective ways to make sure you don't do that?
And so there's kind of like, you can look at it from a culture perspective, you can look at it from an individual behavior perspective, and I think it's both and. And so if you want to start, let's set the system at the top. So the types of policies you set, the types of behaviors that you either implicitly or explicitly reward. So one of the examples that's really interesting is unlimited PTO, which can be a really great policy and give people a lot of flexibility, only if there's clarity in how to utilize the policy and people don't feel like they're going to be punished if they take time off, and they have to see their leaders do it as well.
That was what I was thinking in reading the book of No Rules Rules, I think, about Netflix and their culture. And they did a study where it was always up to the leader. They had unlimited PTO. Some teams did it, they were always gone, they always hit everything, it was great. And then other teams took none, and it was all, what is the leader doing?
Yes, absolutely. And so that PTO piece gets into things like rest and renewal, so that you can rest yourself physically, mentally, do things that you enjoy. That's a key part of it. And so we talked about kind of at the system level. If you want to look more at your team level, what's your team culture? Psychological safety can be something that makes it a lot easier for people to feel comfortable at work, sharing things that they need to share. And then you mentioned before being very emphasized on new managers. So how do you manage this, especially in the tech space? That comes down to the individual manager behavior. And some newer research found that your manager has the same impact on your mental health as your partner, spouse. It's a massive That's impact on someone's mental health. And so it's actually, I'm going to call them small things. The behaviors are not always natural, and they don't always feel small when you're performing them, but they seem like, oh, I can just skip this, but it actually is really, really meaningful to employees. if your manager actually listens to you
Yes.
in a way that shows that they care. So they're active listening. They're not planning what they're going to say next.
Yeah.
They're not trying to solve the problem for you. So that's where I love my coaching background, because it's taking much more of a coaching approach. People can oftentimes solve their own problems and they feel a lot more empowered to take action if they feel supported and their manager understands what it is that's going on with them, what it is they want to do. And the other part around that is being respectful of people's boundaries. So there's a part of learning how to set boundaries. There's a part of learning how to respect other people's boundaries. I really like a lot of the work from Brene Brown. She says the most compassionate people are the most boundaried. So they make it really clear what's okay and what's not okay. And so it removes a lot of the ambiguity, the discomfort that you can feel in social situations if you don't know what your role is.
Yeah, and to me, that kind of connects with something that we were talking about earlier, and this idea of in a remote world now, and how important it is, even especially at the team level.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to set those kinds of boundaries at an organizational level. At a team level, what are the expectations? Because in a pre-COVID world, it was at least marginally clear where it's like, I come into the office, I'm at work, I leave the office, I'm not at work.
Yeah.
And sure, people took work home, they did all that kind of stuff, but there was at least some kind of boundary set. Whereas as soon as you go remote, everything's out the window. And so even simple things that I've seen leaders do of making it very clear to their team of, I stay up late and I like to work after my kids go to bed. And so at 11 p.m., I'm going to send some emails. You do not need to respond. It's just when I work. And being very clear and intentional about even those kinds of boundaries.
No, the time boundaries, like when people work and when they don't, because flexibility is a great thing. I think it went viral on social media. There's a leader that had kind of a disclaimer in all of their emails. Like, I work when it's best for me. You work when it's best for you. And so don't feel pressure to respond when you receive this. And I think just being really upfront and clear. It's about taking intentions that are implicit and making them more explicit so that people understand what it is you're trying to do. And especially with tech leaders, another person that I think is really wonderful is Cal Newport, who wrote a lot about deep work. And there's also a really interesting academic article from 1999, I still love it, by Leslie Perlow called The Time Famine. And she looked a lot about how software engineers in particular utilize their time to collaborate with one another, because you have collaborative work and then you have solo work, and then the role that leaders played in it. And so leaders would oftentimes come in with like a new thing that felt like an emergency and a fire, and it kept preventing their employees from being productive and actually producing the things that would have an impact on the organization, because they had to stop their deep work coding, do this emergency, and then figure out how to do their normal work. And so some of these things seem so obvious, or like how people coordinate their time, but time coordination is a big challenge, and it contributes a lot to well-being.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and I think it's great that you brought up Cal Newport, because I think he just so often talks about kind of the tools that we have and the lack of forethought or lack of thinking around how to use those tools, and that it just creates this kind of big jumble of we're kind of always doing a little bit of everything, and we don't have any intention, we don't have any boundaries, and so it makes it really difficult. So for those managers, like those, I think those are some great techniques of setting boundaries, being very clear. What are some things that individual managers can be watching out for, like red flags, things to, because I think the other challenge with well-being is that it can often be seen both at the manager level and as the individual contributor as a weakness. I'm not doing it. And so we spend a lot of time trying to hide it, especially in the tech world where it's all about hustle culture. It's all about getting tons of stuff done. So if that's the case where, because people are naturally going to try to, they're not going to, maybe you have a really psychologically safe environment, which is amazing. And people are like, hey boss, I'm burnt out. Chances are that's pretty rare. No. So what are some red flags that a manager can be watching out for?
So I think there's red flags to watch out for, and then also language to talk about what it is you need and what it is you want. And so one of the things that I find to be really successful is when you're advocating for yourself and your well-being, to switch the language. So it's not, I need something because I'm deficient, because it's a weakness. I do my best work at this time of day, and therefore I'm going to block that time on my calendar. And so you're not asking permission, you are just telling someone, this is what I need to do my best work. you will see great performance from me when I have that.
Yep.
And when you remove it, you may see my performance decrease because I'm not getting the thing that I need in order to be productive.
Okay.
And so even also too, from a red flag and weakness perspective, we all live in human meat suits. I call it a meat suit because you have to maintain it. It needs certain things. And so even with hustle culture in particular, I love this study about investment bankers. Alexandra Michelle followed investment bankers for 9 years and just studied them to see, and they'd work 120 hours a week and be like,
real.
it's
like,
my choice to do so. I love it. And their bodies were giving out on them. So the mind can be willing, but the body isn't always going to be able to do that. And so being able to acknowledge like, okay, there is a human physical piece of this that I need to attend to. There's also what I want. There's also purpose. There's all these other different things that motivate me. So managers, I found some of my best managers will ask me what my red flags are because stress is variable from individuals. And so, one of my managers asked me, like, what do I need to watch out for? Like, how will I know that you're not having a great time? And so the way that I answered that is like, if you see me online after this time consistently, things aren't good for me because I keep, even though I work in a startup, I really value being able to start and end my day at consistent times because that lets me live my life outside of work.
I love that you just corrected me. You know, I'm here earlier on saying like, it's all different. Everybody has to be the same. And then I'm just asking you like, what are the red flags?
No,
like,
there's no. Well,
like,
everyone wants to make it easier. And that's like management is so hard is it varies from person to person, context to context, space and time. All of those things are relevant to being effective leader and manager.
Exactly. And so as a manager, the key thing is go find out. You can't know ahead of time. Just like what stresses people out will vary, how that stress manifests itself is going to be very different for different people.
Yeah, and questions are incredibly powerful. I think particularly new leaders feel like they magically need to have all the answers all of a sudden and to show that you're performing well, but actually telling people to their face what you think they need is not helpful, especially when you can just ask them and then they will tell you and then you both know. And also in that conversation, it may be that the person doesn't know what they need at that point in time. So you can put a pin in it and say like, okay, well, I'd like you to think about it and tell me 2 things next week when we have our next one-on-one. But it's going to be a lot better if the individual person comes up with what it is they need and what would work for them.
And the other thing that sparked in my memory is the iceberg model, right? Where, you know, we as people, we're all like icebergs where there's the little bit that we can see above, that's the actions that are actually happening out in the world. But then there's all this stuff underneath. And then one of the biggest failures or mistakes that anybody can make, but certainly managers, is they see those actions and they attribute them to something down below when really you have no idea. And so, you know, when we're talking about giving feedback, it's always about, you talk about the action, never the emotion or the reason for that action. You don't know why somebody was late to work, you know, and so questions are the way to solve that. It's like, I noticed this is happening. Could you tell me why? Or is there anything going on?
My favorite question is, can you tell me more about this? Or can you walk me through your thinking? I found from doing a lot of qualitative research, if you ask why, people tend to get really defensive. They think they did something wrong. And so if you're actually seeking more information, like, oh, I'm noticing this pattern. Are you seeing it too? Can you tell me more about that? Because like you mentioned with feedback, there's a great Harvard Business Review article called The Feedback Fallacy, which I really, really love. And it points out that a lot of the times when we give feedback is from our own perspective of what excellence is. And that may or may not be helpful to that individual because everyone's got different strengths and they're going to perform slightly differently. So there are some instances like a nurse putting in an IV. There's kind of there's an excellent way and a not excellent way to do that. But most of leadership, what people are doing in the workplace, it's very subjective. And so even trying to understand more about where someone is coming from, it's one of the reasons why I love doing the type of research that I do, because everyone's perspective is valid. And that's where you get into things like an intention impact gap, where I'm intending to come across a particular way and it's not being received that way. And so that kind of information is very useful for managers because whatever it is isn't translating. It's a translation problem and it's easier not to take it personally. It's like what I'm trying to do just isn't landing. So how can I tweak this? How can I translate it differently to be more effective?
I love that. This has been great.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think there's some really clear takeaways there for people. I mean, the biggest one, if I had to sum it all up, it's like, just ask.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
ask.
Questions rock. And Edgar Schein has written a lot about it. He's got a book called Humble Inquiry, which is wonderful. He has Humble Consulting. It's his whole approach to coming in and working with people and helping is by not focusing on making a statement, but by focusing on asking good and powerful questions.
I love it. Well, I think that's a great way to close. Ask good and powerful questions.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Mandy. I'm sure people got a lot out of it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are looking for help turning your organization's great engineers into great managers, me and my team at Better Everyday Studios would love to help. We deliver targeted and interactive training workshops that are designed to help build the 3 fundamental skills of any new manager: building trust, giving feedback, and setting goals. Reach out to me through matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can start making your organization better every day.